They were not making this move to win a World Series. That's not what this was. Brewers needed somebody with a pulse, with breathing lungs, with a soul inside the body of a pitcher. Essentially, they needed a body to take the mound. They're 3 starters short at the moment. The problem is going to occur and come in if Lyles is the lone move that the Brewers make before the trade deadline today in terms of acquiring a starting pitcher. But I understand the frustration and disappointment from Brewer fans. The pitching staff is already awful. That's when they're healthy. And you add another arm to the mix, a guy who has an ERA of 15 for the month, for July. And he's 1-6 in his last 9 starts and hasn't even made it out of the second inning of 2 out of his last 3. So I get it. I mean, for as much as the Brewers need a warm body to throw out there on the mound to pitch, and he's going tonight, the numbers for Lyles this season, I think that the Brewers actually did the Pirates a favor by taking him off their hands. Welcome to the program, the Aaron Michaels Show. If you want to get a hold of us, you can do that. Email aaronmichaelsshow@gmail.com and on Twitter @Aaron M. Show. Breaking news right before we hit the air here. The Brewers have traded, also in addition to getting the ever-coveted Jordan Lyles, the Brewers have just made a trade, just came over the wire. Jesus Aguilar going to Tampa Bay for right-hander Jake Faria, relief pitcher from Tampa Bay. Faria is 26 years old, has appeared in 7 outings this season, all in relief. 2.70 ERA. Now, he is only 26, and he will be under contract, it looks like, through 2023, so this is not going to be a half-year rental for the Brewers, which is a good thing. 2.70 ERA over 7 relief outings this year. And Jesus Aguilar gone. The Brewers do have some options. I don't know if this means that they're not going to trade Moustakas, because, well, interestingly enough, that leaves the Brewers with all 3 first base options are lefties. Before you had the platoon between Aguilar, right-handed hitter, and Thames, a lefty. And even if right now you want to throw Travis Shaw in the mix, if he bothers sticking around, you throw him in the mix. He's another lefty. Moustakas can play first base. He's a lefty. It's all lefties right now. And Thames not so good against left-handed pitching. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. I don't think the Brewers are going to miss Aguilar a whole lot. He's batting .225 this year. He did hit 35 home runs last season, but obviously he has not been the same player. And it seemed like he was starting to heat up a little bit, but inconsistent playing time, and he hasn't been that good. So I don't think it's a huge loss, but it does leave the Brewers in an interesting predicament with having all left-handed options right now who can play first base. So that is a little bit different, maybe a little bit surprising. But okay, here's what needs to happen if the Brewers want to be serious about a World Series in 2019. And they got a bullpen guy right now. Just traded for him. But if they really want to be serious about contending for a World Series in 2019, which I think I have to watch last night's game against the A's, there's a lot of problems with this Brewer team. But if they want to be a serious contender, starting pitching. And I'm not sure that they can get what they need to be a serious contender as far as starting pitching goes. I don't know that those pitchers are out there, to be honest with you. What the level of what they need, I don't even know if it's available on the market. But essentially what they need is 2 starting pitchers. And even with that, how far is that going to take them? All right, let's rewind back to last year for a moment. The Brewers were 1 game away from going to the World Series. That obviously would have been a lot of fun. Would have been a big thing for the city and for the organization. But yeah, I was telling people during the Dodgers series, it doesn't matter if the Brewers win this or if the Dodgers win it. Either one of these teams are going to go and get slaughtered by the Red Sox, and that's what happened. Fast forward back to this season, back to now. If the Brewers get 2 more Brandon Woodruffs, which is a major league stretch, I don't even think there's anyone out there on the trade market. Not even one who's equal to Woodruff. But if they got 2 more Woodruffs, they might be good enough to compete for the NLDS with the Dodgers this year. But even if they were to do that, they have to go face probably the Yankees in the World Series, and then it's game over. And keep in mind, if the Brewers do want to acquire the pitchers they need to make a run, and you want a World Series, you can't afford to lose anything off your Major League roster. And right now, they traded Aguilar, but right now, their 2 biggest pieces to trade in the whole organization are Grandal and Moustakas. And you may be able to trade both of them away for a couple of pitchers that maybe could put you in some kind of contention with the Dodgers if all you're worried about is the National League pennant. But listen to this. As good as Hira and Yelich are on offense, losing Moustakas and Grandal would take your offense to a level where you wouldn't be able to compete with a team like the Yankees for a World Series, even if you did happen to make it that far. It's hard to go all in on this Brewer team at the moment. They've showed some small flashes of being okay. And I don't even want to say good, because I don't think that the Brewers are a very good baseball team. I think for the most part, they're average. I think that would be a fair assessment. Brewers are an average baseball team. And in some instances, they're a little above average. And they can do that for a small stretch. But they haven't been able to sustain playing at any kind of a high level. The bullpen's been better recently, but Peralta comes in last night, gives up a run. I mean, I guess everyone thought that after his 1 save last week that was the awakening that the team needed, but now in Peralta's last 2 outings, he's given up runs. And the Hader comes in last night, 10th inning, gives up the walk-off home run. The bullpen just is not reliable. And recently, it's been one of the strengths of the team. And even that is not reliable on a night-in, night-out basis. The offense has been a little better since the All-Star break. Yeah, guys like Kane and Thames hitting better. Obviously, Hira. Moustakas is what he is. But the offense has even been better, but that didn't show up last night. Even I guess what you would consider the strong points of this Brewer team are not reliable. Between offense, starting pitching, and bullpen, any given night, one of those 3 is missing. If you got the offense, the starting pitching is horrendous. If you got the starting pitching, bullpen blows it. If you got the starting pitching and no offense, and the offense comes back late, the bullpen blows it. Last night, you have good starting pitching, a miracle by Hauser, and the bullpen wasn't too bad until late in the game, when they ended up blowing it, but the offense was a no-show. It's always something. You don't know what you're going to get out of the bullpen on a nightly basis. You don't know what you're going to get out of Jeffries. He's obviously not what he was last year. Albers has been pitching well, but how long is that going to last? Plus, this team makes stupid mistakes. It's like a habitual thing. Lapses on defense, lapses on the bases, stupid errors. What the hell was that throw that Hira made last night? And then on the next play, he boots it. It's a team that's full of a lot of problems. And no one area that you can always lean on. There's nothing when you flip on a Brewer game, you say, okay, I know the offense is going to be there tonight, or I know the starting pitching will be there tonight, or the bullpen will be there tonight. It's a crapshoot. And the offense goes through stretches where they're good. Bullpen goes through stretches where they're good. Starting pitching, not so much. They're never good, for the most part. And then you add on to that just the stupid mistakes, the errors, the lapses on defense, not covering bases, whatever the case may be. Starting pitchers giving up 6 runs on 80 pitches through the first 3 innings. These are not things that a good team does. Packers. Mike Danials with some interesting comments after being cut by the Packers and signed by the Lions. He says that he thanks God that he got cut and that he gets to play with a defensive genius, meaning Mike Patricia. Now, that was not the most telling or interesting comment that he made. And you got to search way down in the article out of the Detroit Free Press to get the good stuff. Daniels says that he is excited to have an opportunity to play football with a competent and smart coach. Now, that made me laugh. That's what happens. Let me quote that again for you. He's excited to have an opportunity to play football with a competent and smart coach. Telling you, that's what happens when you spend an entire career with Mike McCarthy. That has to be who he's referring to, isn't it? I mean, in my deductive reasoning, I can only think of 3 people he could possibly be referring to who he thinks was not a smart or competent coach. It's either Mike Patton, Matt LaFleur, or Mike McCarthy. I don't know of anyone who thinks that Patton is stupid or incompetent. I've heard nothing but glowing reviews for him by current and former players. Everyone agrees he's got a fun and fantastic scheme. I read an article this morning. Kevin King talks about how much he loves playing in his defense, and all players seem to concur. Players like playing for him. Patton also like playing in his system. And as far as LaFleur goes, I mean, he spent a few weeks with him, Daniels did, in OTAs. He was cut the night before training camp. I don't think he had much of anything to go off of to make a judgment in one way or the other about LaFleur. Now, the book is going to be out on LaFleur as to whether or not he's smart or competent or a good coach. Time will tell. And I don't know of anyone who makes that assertion about a coach after a couple of weeks in OTAs. I think he's got to be talking about McCarthy, who, by the way, no one wanted when he was a coaching free agent. Can we stop with the whole McCarthy thing? Nobody wanted him. The Cleveland Browns didn't want him. The guys in the front office who know him best. Oh, McCarthy come out. Oh, yeah, I just going to take the year off. That, okay. I mean, if I go and apply for 5 different jobs and nobody hires me, I guess I can come out and say, yeah, I just didn't want to work at any of them. I'm gonna take a month or 2 off of work. And nobody wanted him. Mike McCarthy. Let's just compare and contrast what happens when a good player or coach is out there and available. Mike Daniels gets cut, and 13 teams are lining up trying to sign him, and he gets to pick where he wants to go. McCarthy gets fired, the football genius, the offensive guru, the quarterback whisperer, and it's crickets. Nobody out there, and the sports media, at least, and the great state of Wisconsin, just makes up excuses for him. That became the narrative. Oh, McCarthy's taking a year off. Well, I don't think you're quite taking a year off. If it's not taking a year off, if he said he wanted to coach, and he did say he wanted to coach. When you say, I want to coach, and nobody wants you, that's not considered taking a year off. That's considered you are jobless. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. I think the addition of Jordan Lyles could be fun for the Brewers. He's pitching tonight. When Chacin comes back, we can have a competition between him and Lyles to see whose ERA can hit 6 first. One thing I do think that the Brewers could and should do is this. Okay, we talked a little bit earlier, and we had a trade today. We'll keep you updated while we're on the air if anything else breaks. But the Brewers did trade Jesus Aguilar to the Tampa Bay Rays for Jake Faria. Faria, 26 years old, 2.70 ERA, 7 relief appearances this season. He should be signed with the team through 2023, so I guess that's good. Not that it'll fix all their problems, but one thing I do think that the Brewers could and should do is this. Whether the Brewers buy or sell, I think that they could trade both Moustakas and Grandal. They're both under contract for this season, and they'll be free agents next year. And I don't think either one of them are going to be around after this season, one way or the other. So if the Brewers buy, you trade them, and you see what you can get in terms of starting pitcher. Because that's obviously what the Brewers need if they want to have a prayer of getting any sort of a run into the playoffs. If they sell, you trade them both and replenish what many consider to be the worst minor league system in the majors. You start that replenishment process, and those are obviously your two top pieces to be able to do that. But really, you have to believe that the near future of the Brewers is kind of hinging on Moustakas and Grandal and what the Brewers do with them. You keep them for the remainder of the season and don't get anything for them. You end up being too weak to probably even make the playoffs this year if you don't get any pitching. So that's a waste. If you trade them for some much-needed pitching for this year, you can get into the playoffs, pray like crazy you get hot, and get some luck, and maybe you get to a World Series. Still no sort of guarantee or big reason to think that you could beat a team like the Yankees, but maybe you get in. Or you trade them for prospects and start replenishing the minors. So we'll see. But that's kind of the Brewers' three options right now with those guys. But we'll keep hitting refresh here, and we will see what happens if there is any other update, anything else on the Brewers or a trade, as the trade deadline is just a few hours away. But Jesus Aguilar already gone, so that will be interesting. If you want to get a hold of the show, forgot to mention again, you can do that. You can email Aaron Michael Sports at gmail.com or on Twitter. I'm at Aaron M. Show. Okay, so this article from NFL.com with Bucky Brooks saying that Aaron Rodgers is overrated. I don't know if you've seen that. Probably not a lot of people upset. Obviously, when you come out with something like this, it's going to cause a stir among Packer fans. But, folks, he is not entirely wrong here in what he wrote. If you've watched Rodgers over the last couple of seasons, now follow me through on this entire thing before you get pissed off at me, before you start sending tweets and whatever. Just listen to the whole thing, okay? Just listen, please. If you've watched Rodgers over the last couple of seasons, I tell you to listen because there's going to be a happy ending for you, okay? But if you've watched Rodgers over the last couple of years where he's been healthy enough to be out on the field for the entire time, he hasn't been what he once was at his peak. He misses a lot of throws, easy throws to open receivers or running backs. He'll hold on to the ball forever and then end up taking sacks or throwing the ball away, or you'll pass up on open receivers in hopes of extending a play to try to air it out. It wasn't working, and that doesn't work. It doesn't matter what you say. The fact of the matter is, Rodgers has not played at a Rodgers level for the past few seasons where he's healthy enough to been out there for a majority of the year. I want to read a few lines from the article at NFL.com just to prove to you and to the rest of the sports media in Wisconsin that will undoubtedly hammer and has been hammering Brooks for what he wrote. I just want to read a few lines to prove to you that this is not insanity. First of all, the stats don't lie. Okay, you can argue about a lot of things, but stats do not lie. Okay, starting at week 7 of the 2015 season, Rodgers sported a 76-33 quarterback record with a 66% completion rate and a gaudy 107 passer rating. That is undoubtedly first-class production. Since that point, though, Rodgers is just 24-24-1 as a starter, with a 62.7% completion rate and a 96.4 passer rating. Additionally, the quarterback is fresh off a season that saw him record the second lowest completion percentage, which is 62.3 of his starting career, as well as the fewest touchdown passes in a season where he played at least 10 games. All right, you can't argue with the stats that show that he has not been as effective. On top of that, you can take the eyeball test. If you've been watching, especially the last 2, maybe 3 seasons he's been out there, he doesn't look comfortable. And his accuracy has not been nearly as good. Like I mentioned before, missing on open receivers. Back to the NFL.com piece. So here's what it says. The All-22 Coaches film also reveals a quarterback with a preference for the three-point shot over the layup. Rodgers would rather launch the ball down the field off an impromptu scramble than take the cheap yards available on a check down to the running back. This prevents Rodgers from attacking the defenses from all angles, the kind of approach that allows Tom Brady, Drew Brees, to provide highly efficient play from the pocket year in and year out. This is one, ladies and gentlemen, that I literally start screaming at my TV about while watching games. He always got to go for the big play. I mean, come on, Tom Brady's made a career as the best quarterback of all time by nickel and diming defenses down the field and winning Super Bowls. Why can't Rodgers do that? Why hasn't he been willing to do that? See, and to me, among many reasons why I thought Mike McCarthy should be fired, this was the big one to me. It was obvious that Rodgers was passing up on easy passes to try and go deep, and it wasn't working. It doesn't work. But it was obvious that McCarthy could not control Rodgers. He didn't have the authority, evidently, to go up to Rodgers, tell him to knock it off. Take what's there, do what works. That was one of the main reasons McCarthy needed to go. And hopefully a new system with a new coach will cause Rodgers to start taking what the defense gives him, because there's no reason not to. Last excerpt from NFL.com. Remember, superstar quarterbacks are expected to carry the franchise with their individual brilliance. And I don't know if we can legitimately point to Rodgers putting the squad on his back in recent years. Sure, the team has won some primetime games with number 12 in a starting role, but Green Bay's middling 33-30-1 record over the past 4 seasons can't be ignored. Like everyone else, writes Brooks, I'm fascinated to see how Rodgers and the Packers perform in year 1 under new coach Matt LaFleur. But given Rodgers' recent play, I just don't understand how anyone could consider him as the absolute cream of the crop at the position at the moment. The part about Rodgers and superstar quarterbacks being expected to put the franchise on their back, I would agree that Rodgers has not done that the past few years, but the guy's done it throughout his career. Now listen, he didn't play up to his contract last year, that big new contract that he got. And I don't know how anyone could try making the argument that he did play up to that. That being said, that guy deserves every single penny of the contract that he's getting right now just for back pay on what he's done in carrying the rest of the organization over his career. Every year, every team he's been on, he's had to fight against the stupidity of his own coach with McCarthy and the very poor general managing of Ted Thompson. McCarthy, an idiot if there ever was one, he not only had Rodgers fighting against the other team's defense, but against himself. Hey, Aaron Jones has a couple of nice runs through the first series of the game. That might be nice to help Rodgers out. Nope, you're going to sit on the bench for 2 quarters so that Ty Montgomery can play. Hey, here's an idea. How about we really throw the defense off and look cool? Let's take Randall Cobb, put him in the I formation from the 3-yard line, run him between the tackles, and watch the little toothpick get stuffed. And then on the next play, we'll send John Kuhn out at wide receiver. No one even bothers covering him because no one thinks that we're stupid enough to actually do this. There's a trillion examples of McCarthy's stupidity and incompetence. But the point is that Rodgers had to fight against that guy. And even if you want to, I mean, some people, even you people out there who think that McCarthy was, he was a great coach. Just so good. Even you guys say that his offense was old and outdated and stale. I don't think it was ever in date. It was always Rodgers bailing him out. But even for you people, well, Rodgers still was the one who made it work. He was the one carrying McCarthy the whole time. So McCarthy had to fight against that, Rodgers had to fight against that, and he also had to fight against the GM and Ted, who drafted a lot of lousy players and who didn't use his entire GM toolbox, who wouldn't get free agents. Rodgers didn't have a good coach around him. Rodgers didn't have good players around him. Never had a good defense. Bad years under Dom Capers. Bad defensive players. An incompetent coach. So that big contract that Rodgers is getting, I'm okay with it. This is back payment on all the years that he's spent literally almost by himself carrying this entire franchise. By himself! So even if he's not playing as well as he did, I can only go after him to a certain point. Because he should be owed all that money that he's getting. And I'm not, and now here's where I told you, stick with me. Okay, because I'll give you some happy sunshine here at the end. I'm not worried about Rodgers this year. I think that he, being in LaFleur's system with a new voice, a new outlook, it'll be good for him. And I think he'll return to elite status this year. I mean, it's hard to go to work every day when your boss is an idiot. It's hard to keep a good attitude or keep your head up and keep producing like you should be. Any of us know that. When you have a boss that sucks, your work life at least, if not more, but at least your work life becomes a drag and you're not as good as what you could or should be. And I think having the 10,000-pound weight named Mike McCarthy off of Rodgers' shoulders is going to allow him both mentally and physically to get back to being the guy that we're used to seeing. So saying that I agree with the writer here that Rodgers is overrated, that doesn't mean that I think that it will be the case this year. I fully think that Rodgers could easily win an MVP award. I don't think he's washed up. I don't think he's lost it physically. The guy's in great shape. He studies like no one else. Physically and between the ears, there's maybe an equal to him. Maybe one or two guys. But there's nobody better than him when he's playing well. There's nothing, as long as there's nothing wrong with him physically, no residue from the past injuries that he's had. I think Rodgers needed a change. A change from a fool to someone who is even halfway competent is going to do wonders for the guy. And it's not going to be just Aaron Rodgers. There will be more players who will be good. I'll explain when we come back. The Aaron Michaels Show, welcome back. Aaron Rodgers is not going to be the only guy to benefit from McCarthy being gone this season. Jimmy Graham. Last offseason, when the Packers signed Graham, I had people telling me how excited they were that Rodgers was finally going to have that big body receiving tight end for the red zone and so on. And everyone, oh my God, this will be great. And my thought was the complete opposite. I knew what was going to happen. They brought Graham in, and McCarthy wasn't going to use him. And lo and behold, what happened? Graham ended up being irrelevant. Didn't get the production that anyone thought would happen. And by the end of the year, people are now asking whether or not Jimmy Graham is washed up or has anything left. Let me go out and make a prediction for you right now. Graham is going to be the big comeback player of the year for the Packers. He's going to look like an all-pro. And it'll soon be forgotten how he didn't factor into the Packers' offense last season under McCarthy. But remember, I'm telling it to you right now. Graham having LaFleur instead of McCarthy, you won't even recognize the production that you get out of Graham this year as opposed to last year. He will be used. He will be used correctly. Speaking of being used correctly now that McCarthy isn't there, Aaron Jones, how about him? I throw another name out there for you. Poor fella, Eddie Lacy. Aaron Jones' career almost took a dumpster dive just like Lacy's did. All right, Jones is one of the most fortunate people on this roster that McCarthy is gone. Because Jones' career was quickly going the way of Lacy. I mean, Jones is by far and away the best running back on this roster. But what did it take to get him out on the field to play more? Gutekunst had to cut Ty Montgomery. McCarthy had to be forced into using Jones by process of elimination of the other running back on the team. But we saw with Jones, just like we did with Lacy for a few years, has some good runs, shows some good production. Congratulations, now go have a seat on the bench. And then Lacy stops caring, taking care of himself, shows up fat, shows up out of shape, doesn't care about football anymore. I wonder why. Why bust your ass when you do, and you do well, your reward is to be sat on the bench in favor of James Starks or John Kuhn or Ty Montgomery? It was insanity, and I'm glad that's over. But Aaron Jones, he is a fortunate man that Mike McCarthy is gone. It is good. That is definitely good. We're going to take one more break. We'll come back and we will wrap up the show. One final segment. Coming back, it is the Aaron Michael Show. Hello, welcome back, Aaron Michael Show. Final segment of the program here today. There is breaking news throughout the course of the show. Today is trade deadline day in Major League Baseball. The Brewers have made a trade. They have sent Jesus Aguilar to the Tampa Bay Rays for relief pitcher Jake Faria. Has an ERA under 3, 7 relief appearances this year. Will be under contract through 2023 unless the Brewers at some point so choose to move him before that. Jordan Lyles, the other big pickup, will be starting tonight. The race is on between him and Chacin. See whose ERA can get up to 6 first. Though it is an unfair advantage that Lyles gets to pitch while Chacin is still a little bit banged up. Makes it a little unfair. But we'll see who can hit 6 first. It was they got, like, again, I laugh, I make fun of it. They needed a warm body who could pitch. They needed somebody who they could literally throw out there because they're running out of people. I don't know why they didn't bring anyone up from the minors just to make a spot start. I don't know. That is the least of the Brewers' concern right now, why they traded for a pitcher as opposed to just bringing up a guy from the minors. Does it matter? I don't know. We'll see what else the Brewers do today. I'd be curious to see if by tomorrow's program, what we'll be talking about is Moustakas going to be there, is Grandal going to be there, are we going to have an actual real starting pitcher to go along with Woodruff once he eventually comes back? Or do the Brewers just sell? It could happen. Or do they really do nothing else besides this? I don't know. We got a few hours left. A quick tidbit here on an article. By the way, if you want to get a hold of us, you can do that. Tweet at Aaron M. Show on Twitter. Email address AaronMichaelShow at gmail.com. Quick tidbit here on an article out of the Wisconsin State Journal. Jason Wilde. Headline, Packers see legitimate competition between Mason Crosby and Sam Ficken. Now, I don't want to get too deep into the kicking competition. Outside of the fact that Crosby is one of the longest tenured players in the organization, I don't think people care an overly large amount about this specific story. I care a little bit about Crosby, but I use this as a springboard to say this. If Crosby is let go, don't be surprised. The days of Ted Thompson and Mike McCarthy and the establishment people on the Green Bay Packers is over. Gutekunst has since taken over the GM duties, since he has shown that he's not afraid to pull the trigger on guys who maybe some thought were pillars on this team. Guys who have been around for a little while. Gutekunst has done things, dropping Ty Montgomery, trading Clinton Dix, releasing Mike Daniels, Of course, firing McCarthy. The status quo, the establishment, is not what it was, which is a really good thing. Don't misunderstand. I love the moves that have been made, all of them. I wouldn't feel like Crosby or anyone else, though, is safe, because things are not business as usual in Green Bay. Under Ted, everything always had to have the appearance of being okay. Everyone's job was safe. Ted liked Mike. Mike liked Ted. McCarthy thought Capers was great. No one badmouthed anyone. No one got fired. No one got benched. No one spoke out of turn. And changes were never made. And thank goodness that's over, because if there's one thing that something like that breeds, it's complacency. With the organization, and especially within the Wisconsin sports media, and also among some fans, some of these Packer fans and a lot of people in the Wisconsin sports media like to fancy themselves as being intellectuals. Meaning, if you call up a radio talk show suggesting that someone be fired because of poor performance, or if you somehow suggest that a player should be benched because of poor performance, you need to be talked off the ledge. We must all be calm. I'll be the voice of reason. No one needs to be fired. It doesn't need to come to that. You're just overreacting, and I get it. You're upset right now. All that kind of BS. Yeah, I'm sure that stuff is not over with the media, because most of the biased sports media do enjoy fancying themselves as the intellectuals. Very smart. They're intellectuals. They don't say or do things that are reactionary. Anytime you want a coach fired or a player benched, it's very reactionary. We don't do that here. But you want to send Travis Shaw back down to the minors. That's a bit of a stretch. Reactionary. Mike McCarthy fired. Well, yeah, I'm surprised somewhat that the Packers fired McCarthy. We're not used to seeing the team be so reactionary. That's what happens. Many of the media in the state and some fans like to suck up to him and pretend to be intellectuals themselves and not reactionary. The media is still going to pull that stuff. But inside the building at Lambeau Field, this is a new era where changes come quickly and rapidly when changes need to be made. Imagine that. So we'll see what happens with the kicking competition. But just in general, keep an eye out, because like we saw last year, and even with Daniels, anything, this team is anything but business as usual. And by the way, just to close out our program here, one thing that we will never do on this show is talk down to frustrated fans. If you're upset that a coach or manager, player is doing bad, and you want to suggest that they be fired or be benched, you are able to call up and do that. You're able to tweet the show or email the show and do that. You should be able to do all that without being mocked or laughed at and ridiculed. But sadly, in Wisconsin sports, that's not the way that it works for the most part. Evidently, if you want to call up a sports talk show and complain, you get laughed at. I hear it all the time. There are a lot of Wisconsin sports fans out there who are frustrated because they don't have a voice or a platform. And you always will with us here on the Aaron Michael Show. You'll have a voice. You'll have a way to show it. You'll have a place to call up and vent without being laughed at and ridiculed and come away frustrated. You will always have that. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll see what the trade deadline brings for the Brewers. We will discuss, recap it all coming up.